Welcome to the show. My name is Reed Huberman. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Today's show is sponsored by our friends over at CMG Home Loans. If you're looking for a brand new home or want to refinance your existing home, because maybe, just maybe, an unsettling market doesn't give you any hope for a financial future if you trust the people in Washington and you realize you need to take your financial future into your own hands, then one of the ways that you can do that is by purchasing a home and investing in real estate. And if you want to do any of that, our friends over at CMG can help you. All you need to do is go to the link on the screen, or you can call 423-598-8990 today and let them know that Indie Thinker sent you. Now, breaking news, Joe Biden is no longer running for president in 2024 after just a week and weeks before that telling us that there is no way he's stepping down because Jill won't let him. He finally admitted that he will be stepping down. Now, here is the letter that he wrote to the American public, oddly, on his own letterhead rather than White House letterhead. You fill in the pieces there, but here's what it said. My fellow Americans, over the past 3.5 years, we have made great progress as a nation, even though the progress has been mostly backwards progress. But anyway, today America has the strongest economy in the world. That's simply because it would be hard to destroy the highest GDP in the world. But Joe Biden did the best that he possibly could. We've made historic investments in rebuilding our nation and lowering prescription drug costs for seniors and in expanding affordable health care to a record number of Americans. We've provided critically needed care to a million veterans exposed to toxic substances, passed the first gun safety law in 30 years, appointed the first African-American woman to the Supreme Court. What, no Kamala? And passed the most significant climate legislation in the history of the world, compounding the inflation that we're already in. America has never been better positioned to lead than we are today. I know none of this could have been done without you, the American people. Don't blame us for what you did. Together, we have overcome a once-in-a-century pandemic, the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. We've protected and preserved our democracy, and we've revitalized and strengthened our alliances around the world. Just ask Israel if you think that one's true. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president, and while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. Now, it will go on, but ultimately, the real question that emerges from that, among many things, is if he is not fit, not capable of running for re-election, then what are we going to do for the next 7 months while he's still within the office of the president? But the real stark thing in that letter is the obvious no mention of the reason why he is stepping down. Now, we all know why. We know that he is in mid to late stages of dementia, that he's incapable of forming words out of his mouth hole. We know that he is receiving a bunch of pressure from his party because of, not to mention just a couple of things, the disastrous debate performance that he had where there were moments of deep incoherence to wandering off, staring in the distance. Some have even posited, not me, because I respect this man deeply, that he was staring into the great, the hereafter, the abyss beyond this life and what awaits him. But the odd behavior at his debate is certainly probably one of those reasons, and the fact that after that there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump that placed a lion's share of the momentum in favor of Donald Trump. Not to mention, at the RNC, this individual came out in support of Donald Trump.
But what happened last week when they took a shot at my hero and they tried to kill the next president of the United States? Enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great again.
And Hogan comes in off the ropes with the guillotine leg drop and finishes Biden, brother. And of course, all of his hopes of re-election. So all of the momentum was on Donald Trump's side, and the Democrats knew that Joe Biden had no chance. Now, Biden had been experiencing a bunch of pressure to get out, and he finally did. But just last week, he was saying, I'm not getting out of the race. Well, the media really had clowned themselves to such a degree that they couldn't any longer, after the debate and after the RNC, continue to think that Joe Biden had a chance in heaven of actually becoming the next president. So they had to do everything in their power to try to pressure Biden to move on, and that is exactly what he's doing. And so now the gaslighting can begin. Let this spin machine go into full motion, because now the lies of Joe Biden are a thing of the past, and now we get to reemerge Kamala Harris as a great option for the future of America. And of course, in the process, the media is going to lie to us and tell us how amazing Joe Biden has been throughout his 50-year career. There will be no mention of the fact that Joe Biden, like the good despot he is, was forced to leave office against his will, against all odds, after it had been proven conclusively that he has no business being our president. But of course, it won't stop intellectual giants like Russell Moore from coming out and saying, "The right call for our country. Thank you, Mr. President." And even people like Jon Favreau, who came out and said, "A courageous and selfless decision. The president did what he's done for the last 4 years. He listened to the American people and put the country's interest ahead of his own." The exact opposite of Donald Trump. So right now, the media machine is ramping up to tell you all of the great things Joe Biden has done for this country. And they will then also ramp up that same lying machine to tell you how Kamala Harris will be a great next president. And they would have you believe that Biden's just hanging up his cleats, that it's time to retire after a great career, rather than the truth of the matter, which I think we all know. But it's important to remind each and every one of us about who Joe Biden is, so that when it comes time to vote, you won't believe any of the things that they've told you about Kamala Harris, because they are all about lying. So I want to present to you today a top 5 list of who Joe Biden is, so that you won't be tempted to forget who Joe Biden has been in the last 50 years. So first, I want to introduce you to Joe Biden, the Whisperer.
Dismiss it at all. Just remind him, I wrote the bill on the environment. Why would I not be for it? Employers can't find workers. I said, yeah, pay them more. This is an employee's bargaining chip now.
Now, why did Joe Biden, on a regular basis, whisper incoherently into a microphone while giving a speech? It boggles the mind, and we may never truly know. But the one thing we can know is this, is that when you've spent the last 50 years of your life detached from reality and not actually engaging with real people, and even spending some of that time deeply in your basement so that you don't actually have to really engage with people on a real level, then you start to lose touch with reality. You start to fail to understand that everything you do isn't clever or good or unweird. Now, I could bring up the very weird habit of sniffing, but we'll push that to the side and just say whispering in microphones during speeches is an incredibly weird thing. But again, when you've been echo chambered for so long, you don't have any concept of what normal people think and act like. And that brings us to kind of the next face of Joe Biden. I want to introduce you to Joe Biden, the intellectual, because Joe Biden has always had this kind of grasp of reason and logic that has defied simple plebes like you and myself. And this was on full display when he cynically attacked Clarence Thomas when he was being interviewed for his position on the Supreme Court. During those hearings, Joe Biden thought that he would display his intellectual prowess, much to the consternation and confusion of everybody else. Here's that.
Welcome to the blinding lights. Finding out what you mean when you say that you would apply the natural law philosophy to the Constitution is, in my view, the single most important task of this committee.
Senator Biden was very focused on natural law. How did that go?
Who knows? I have no idea what he was talking about.
I just want to make sure we all know what we're talking about here, that you and I know at least what we're talking about here. There's a fervent and aggressive school of thought that wishes to see natural law further inform the Constitution than it does now, argued against by the positivists led by Judge Bork. Now again, that may be lost on all the people, You know and I know what we're talking about.
I have to be perfectly honest with you. You sit there and you have no idea what they are talking about. All I know is that he was asking me these questions about natural law.
Someone may apply it in a way, like Moore, who leads him in a direction that is, quote, liberal. You may apply it in a way that leads you in a direction that's conservative. Or you may, like many argue, not apply it at all. But it is a fundamental question that is going to be almost impossible for non-lawyers to grasp in an exchange. But you know and I know it is a big, big deal. And in conclusion,
one of the things you do in hearing is you have to sit there and look attentively at people you know have no idea what they're talking about.
All right, so there you have Clarence Thomas saying, I have no idea what Joe Biden was talking about. Nobody at home knew what Joe Biden was talking about. And if Joe Biden of today was that Joe Biden, I would say Joe Biden didn't even know what Joe Biden was talking about. But I think he did. I think he was just simply lying, of course, for some odd reason. Maybe that's because lies flow like water in Washington. But when you've been lying your whole life, sometimes I don't even know if you know that you're lying anymore. And all it does is qualify you for mistrust. But this is certainly not the first time that Joe Biden has been caught lying, because not only is Joe Biden not really that smart, he lied about how smart he was throughout his whole career. Here's him when he first ran for president back in the day, lying about his resume.
Went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and in fact ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only needed 123 credits.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student in college.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in a class of 85 at the University of Syracuse Law School. I mean, this guy comes off this whole thing as a flyweight.
Now Biden says Newsweek is right. His memory had failed him.
Now, I could bring up a litany of lies of Joe Biden, not the least of which is Joe Biden, who brought pride back to the White House, lighting up the White House in pride colors, and then having drag queens and nude men kind of shake their fake appendages at the White House for these pride events, kind of implicitly communicating that men can be women. That's just the tip of the iceberg for the kind of lies that Joe Biden has been telling throughout his career. And here we see that he flat out lied to the American public about his past. He's also stolen speeches in the past. He's also on a regular basis kind of attacked the people who put him in office, like that man he was speaking to in that clip. So Joe Biden has kind of been an acrimonious SOB his whole life. It isn't just the old age setting in that's made him call people fat.
Look, fat, look, here's the deal.
But this is the problem with a guy like Joe Biden. When you forget the people who put you in office, you make them the enemy. And your position of power is for your sake, to tell everybody how amazing you are rather than to serve the people. But Joe Biden doesn't understand any of that because he's been swimming in a sea of his own lies his whole career. Now, the biggest lie that he told kind of shows us another face of Joe Biden, that Joe Biden is a defender of democracy, that old scrappy Joe will fight to keep this nation intact against the threat of Republicans. So if you'll remember Joe Biden speaking at a blood-red Independence Hall, you'll remember that that speech flew in the face of everything that he said that he was supposed to do as president, which was to restore normalcy and bring unity back to the country. Well, when you call all of your opponents enemies and threats to democracy, you don't really do that. So here's just a refresher of Joe Biden, the defender of democracy.
But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love, They promote authoritarian leaders, and they fan the flames of political violence that are a threat to our personal rights, to the pursuit of justice, to the rule of law, to the very soul of this country.
So there we have the media's mainstay. They loved them some dark Brandon. Whenever Joe Biden would shout at clouds, they loved it. Whenever he acted like the old man that wanted to get the kids off of his lawn, they would highlight it immediately, because as soon as Joe started yelling, that meant that he wasn't falling asleep. Really what it means is that we see here the encompassing, the illustration of what Joe Biden was all about. He was a corrupt old man that was happy to weaponize every single vestige of power against his enemies. And he certainly did that with the deep state against his opponents while he was in office. And I'm not just simply talking about Donald Trump, who faced a litany of not only impeachments while he was in office, but when Joe Biden was in office, a litany of accusations against him, some of which have already been thrown out and some of which are laughably ridiculous. But I'm also talking about people like the guy who created that meme, who was thrown in prison for it. I'm talking about people like Paulette Harlow, who was sentenced to 2 years in prison because she was trying to save children at an abortion clinic. And I'm talking about people like the governor of Texas. Greg Abbott, duly elected in his state, was simply trying to protect children from the predations of the transgender movement. And it's now been revealed that Rachel Levine was employing every vestige of power at his disposal to try to go after Greg Abbott. This was par for the course for Joe Biden, the defender of democracy. All right, let's go to one final thing. I think we're well familiar with it at this point in time. And I think the top face of Joe Biden that we can remember as we look forward to the future is Joe Biden, the orator.
Time for America to back up on its feet and once again fight for the proposition that we hold these truths to be self-evident. Sounds corny. Not a joke. Think about it. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing. You know how we talk about it. Are we the people? Folks. Well, I'm sick and tired of smart guys. I'm tired of being quiet. I'm sick and tired. I'm just sick and tired. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. Wealthy kids, black kids, Asian kids. No, I really mean it, but think how we think about it.
Now, obviously, I could have shown you a lot, but those were just some of my favorites. With this president, the media successfully dropped the bar to, if Joe Biden can finish coherent sentences, maybe he should run again. But obviously, he couldn't even do that. With the help of people like Joy Reid and the dutiful gaze of our mainstream media betters, we were told that Joe Biden is a great president. And now we're going to have to go through the insufferable nonsense of hearing them tell us about how much we should respect the legacy of Joe Biden. I'm sorry, no. Joe Biden is a tyrant. And he was forcibly removed from office only after 4 years of proving he was not mentally fit for office. And if he had his way, he would still be in the Oval Office, and we would have to pry his cold, dead fingers off that desk. This is not a great man, nor a great legacy, but an indictment on the deep state and how they are subverting the will of the people. You can even see this in the fact that Democrats have once again stolen an election from their own electorate, making a habit of this every year. The people voted for Joe Biden as the Democrat candidate, not Kamala or anyone else, but now they're getting rid of Joe so that they can screw the people and do whatever they want. For Kamala's part, the media won't remind you that she was the defender of democracy back during the days of the pandemic by encouraging people to bail out rioters and looters during COVID. She's also the one who lied about the disaster zone known as the southern border when she never went there.
We are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe.
She's also the one who obnoxiously gave us her pronouns and told us she was in a blue suit.
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit.
Yet still, some people will vote D in November in the midst of all of that. But I do have some red pills if you need them. But for the love of everything holy, just don't memory hole what the media has done in the past when it comes to the future and what they tell you about how great Kamala is. Just remember an old saying, you know a Democrat is lying whenever their lips are moving. to emit a blood-curdling cackle likened unto that of the Joker. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and to check out today's show sponsors down below in the description of this podcast. Most importantly, go with God.